Well, good evening. How are you all this evening?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Great.
It's good to see you all. This is so unconventional. Call me crazy, but I actually do enjoy seeing your faces. And I'm sorry that we can't be in council chambers, but we are here in virtual reality. So for at least the next month, that is going to be our reality. And the first thing I'd like to do is do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll lead us in the pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve by Councilmember Tyser. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hall and Councilmember Wilsey. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. The first item on the mayor's report, which I will open up for discussion on these items, but the first item is the City of Roswell reentry plan. And these are informational items, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask. And I would like you all to know that your city employees have been working very hard during this time. So while we all have had time off, many folks have had time off, City Hall has been closed virtually, our employees have been in City Hall anticipating the next move of this pandemic. So let me just say this to start off with, our employees were ahead of the curve, no pun intended, but ahead of the curve as far as what we need to put in place from the very beginning. And that was put in place before the governor's initial orders. As you all know, what we are doing in the city of Roswell is we are following the governor's orders. His orders have stated that we can't be stricter or less strict, and that we have to follow them. We have no choice, and that is good, that's fine. So my executive orders have reflected that. And as we have been moving forward, we are looking at and analyzing, and I can't even tell you all how much our staff has been looking into how this affects us, how do we analyze it, what are the answers? So when folks ask us what this all means, we are willing to respond and can respond to it. So it's a very complex issue, and I want our citizens to know that it is very complex, but also that we are on top of it. And when I say we are on top of it, I don't even know how many pages this is, but this is the city's reentry policy. It's at least 50 pages long. And what our city administrator has done is he has got, well, number one, we established committees. And we've got the various committees, and Gary can talk to you about those. But with the reentry policy, what Gary has done, Gary Palmer, I should say, has done is he's gone to every division head, department head, and he has said to them, okay, reentry, what does that look like for you? And what does that look like for our citizens? And what does that look like for the city? And I can also tell you that our staff has shared that with our neighboring cities, of which in Fulton County, and they have been very grateful for the information that we have provided them. But what I would like you all to know is that we are on the front lines with this, and that our staff is providing us with a solid, safe, reentry policy. And Mr. Palmer, would you please speak to council on what are the various committees that you all have set up and when those started?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'll give a little bit of history on how we get into this event. Back in early March, we activated the EOC at a very low level of anticipation of this event. During that activation, we set it up with some public safety personnel, myself, some other folks, just to monitor the event. And as the event gets more intense, the EOC obviously will graduate to a higher level. I think right now we just went back to level 2 in the EOC, which means we'll operate intermittently throughout the week and as needed. But we activated the EOC early in March, and at that time we formed the Incident Command Team. And the Incident Command Team reports to both the Atlanta-Fulton County Emergency Management Agency as well as the City of Roswell's chain of command. The Incident Command Team subsequently created the following teams, consisting of many key personnel with varying skill sets. We created an operations team, a finance team, a logistics team, a planning team, and a grants team. All of those with some obvious duties and some other jobs that we've given them from time to time to help us chase some stuff down. It's worked very well for us. A lot of our surrounding jurisdictions have come to us for information and assistance, which we've also given them as well. Upon the mayor's proclamation of a state of emergency, the mayor created her executive task force, and we also created the COVID-19 executive team, which consists of myself, the city attorney, the chiefs, Jeff Leatherman, Julie Breckville, and Pavel Troch, who is a battalion chief, but also serving as our emergency operations manager. Some of the other teams that we created within that group was an innovation team tasked with coming up with some ideas on how we can do some things differently within the city of Roswell during this posture, how we can help some of our businesses during this posture. We created a communications team headed by Julie to attack some of the issues that we're seeing arise on social media, get some information out there. We also created the recovery and reentry team, which put together the document that you have that the mayor was talking about previously. If there's any questions about any of the teams, I'd be happy to answer.
Does council have any questions? Well, and let me just say this, and I've told many of you this, and I will tell the public this, that if someone would have given me the choice of where to be in this pandemic, I would have chosen Roswell, because I will tell you, with the caliber of our staff, the preparedness of the city of Roswell, I feel very comfortable, as I always have, going forward in this pandemic. So I would just like to send a message out to the citizens of Roswell that we are extremely prepared. And I would like to thank our staff for doing that, because I will tell you that because we have this high caliber staff, these professionals on board, we have been so far ahead of this that would make other cities blink. So, I'm very thankful, and I would like to thank our staff. And I hope that you all join me in doing that as well. This is a difficult situation. I will tell you that I am constantly in contact on various conference calls, everything from the feds to the state to 5 or 6 other calls on a daily and weekly basis. I know that Mr. Palmer is in contact with city administrators and managers on a daily basis. I know that Mr. Davidson is in contact with city attorneys on a daily basis. Our department heads are in contact with our neighboring cities on a daily basis. And the goal is that we send a unified message. And I think we can all agree that they have done a great job with that. And I think that you all understand the amount of time that we all spend on phone calls and conversations throughout the day, throughout the week. And, we're just trying to glean the information as best we can and do the right thing for the citizens of Roswell. So are there any other comments about that? That's just more of an informational item for the public. So I hope the public understands and welcomes the fact that we are very engaged. Even though City Hall is closed, we all are extremely engaged in looking out for the health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. The other thing I would like to talk about is I started a Mayor's Business Recovery Task Force, and we had our first meeting well over a week ago, and we're following up with that. And the folks that are on this task force range from very small local businesses. We've got our city staff. We've also got Roswell Inc. staff. We've got Trent Perry with our DDA, as well as our East Roswell Economic Action Committee. And then we've also got Andy Williams, we've got Jeff Leatherman, we've got Michael Fisher. As I said, we've got Gary Palmer. And what this task force, what I put it together for was, once again, how do we recover from this? How do our businesses recover? We had over 20 people on our last virtual meeting. And it was very interesting. And the good part about it was sharing the information. So, for example, the things that are affecting some businesses aren't affecting others. And I'll give you examples. We've got the restaurant industry, and they are concerned about when they're opening up. They need clarification on square footage and how many folks that they can allow in. And I'm just going to gloss over this. And then also we've got the healthcare industry that has opened up elective surgeries last week. And so they are trying to encourage people, because our hospitals are virtually empty. They've laid off or furloughed nurses and doctors. And so they are looking at reopening, because those elective surgeries are very important to them. While they need to keep the spaces open for COVID emergencies, right now our hospitals and many of our medical facilities are basically locked down. So they've opened back up. They are looking for people to come in for elective surgeries. We've got a lot of local retail shops that are, want to push the shop local, which we are doing. And then also, the retailers are looking for guidance on the economic development department to help small businesses identify available suppliers in the supply chain. Because from what I hear, and I just learned this through this meeting, was that many of our local businesses have difficulty with supply chain. So even while they want to make the product, they can't because of the supply chain. So, and then we've got utilities. Georgia Power is willing to help. They're willing to jump in and help, and they will be doing that. And then also, I guess what this comes back to is, because there is so much information out there, and it's difficult to discern, it's difficult to wade through, that folks are looking to us, the City of Roswell, the elected officials, to provide them with guidance. And that, I think, is the key role, but also exchanging information among our business owners is key. So what we will be doing with our business owners through the Recovery Task Force is I'm following up with them. I hope to have it out today. However, my assistant was out sick. But what we will be doing is talking with them and also getting information out as we need to get that out. Then the last thing I would like to close with is, we've had numerous people that are anxious to get out into our parks. They're anxious to engage in outdoor activities. And we are looking at that on a daily basis. We've got an emergency team meeting on Wednesday afternoon to define that further and issue a new executive order. So if anyone is asking you as an elected official or anyone out in the public is wondering what we're doing, please know that we are monitoring this on a daily basis. I am in touch with these folks on a daily basis. And trust me, we are all working very hard to get us back to our new normal. So does anybody have any questions about that?
Mayor Henry, I have a
Yes.
question about your task force. Is that available for the general public to participate in, to listen to the meetings?
That is invitation only. However, I will publish the minutes from them.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
the only reason, let me just say this, the only reason why it's invitation only is because it's an interactive. And when you get over 20 or so people, it's very difficult to interact and sort through the comments. So we've got a good cross section, everything from Georgia Power down to Lily Sage Apothecary. And we've got everything from restaurants to, I don't know what's on the other end of that, but so please know that they're well-rounded. And then of course, anybody that has any comments that they would like to deliver to City Hall, we certainly take those into account.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Wilsey.
Thank you, Mayor Henry, for setting up this task force. I'm sure that a lot of good work is being done and a lot of good collaboration among the people who are on the task force. Has there been a published list of who was invited to be a part of it?
There hasn't been a published list, but I'd be happy to publish that.
Okay, that would be
along with our first minutes.
Sure. I just had some questions on who is serving and kind of
Well, and let me just say this is the mayor's business recovery task force.
Right.
So these were done at my invitation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for doing that.
And I would absolutely publish that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Do you have for us any update regarding testing the community?
The only thing that I know about testing in the community is what we have published. And let me say this, here's the difficult part for us is I have sent personal or emails from the mayor's office letting people know where the testing sites are, and those were provided by Cabell, and they've been very helpful. So there are numerous testing sites, and I would ask, I've got Julie Breckville in the room, and I would ask her to let me know what we published on our COVID-19 site.
Mayor, the website has information about where folks can go to get tested, and there are free sites. There's one up in Alpharetta on North Point Parkway. It's free. You don't have to have any symptoms. The governor would like everyone to be tested, even if you do not have symptoms. That's where we're moving now. So there are many free places to get tested. You can go to roswellgov.com and find out where those places are. We have links on the website. We have phone numbers on the website for people to let them know where there's testing in their area, and so they can go to the website. We've also been posting those on social media as well. We made a post today about the site up at North Point Parkway. So all of that information is going out daily. But yes, there are places near Roswell for people to be tested for free.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. The other thing that I would like to add is there are other places like Walgreens, CVS, those places, but The other thing, here's what I'm getting conflicting information from people, and somebody tell me if I'm wrong. When you are tested, that is whether or not you have COVID-19 on that day. That doesn't mean you didn't have it before that day, or you don't have it after that day. So for folks out there that said I tested negative, I had a woman tell me today, she said, well, I tested negative, but she had been in bed for 2 weeks. Her husband, a chiropractor, had tested positive while he had the symptoms. She became sick. She went to get tested after the fact, and she said, well, I never had it. But she was tested on a day that she didn't have symptoms. So I want to just be very clear, and trust me, this is way beyond my skill set, but I do want to be very clear that testing is done. When it's done, it's the day that you are tested. So you could have had it the day before for 14 days. You could get it the day after for 14 days. It's just that day that you were tested. Councilmember Scott.
Yes, Mayor. Is there any way we can compile information of how many people in Roswell have been tested or up to date? What percentage of people in Roswell that have been tested?
The health department through Fulton County is tracking that. And I believe, Ms. Breckville, that it is on the Fulton County Health Department
And there's a link on our
website. And there is a website on the City of Roswell COVID page. So anyone can access that on a daily basis. And I will also tell you that I've had a couple of emails because we had a spike in cases a little over a week ago. And I will say that our one of our nursing homes, it's the only full nursing home that we have here in Roswell, was tested positive. They have 199 beds. They tested positive for 30 cases of COVID, and they tested positive for 5 employees. Now, those 5 employees, I would like to caution you, are basically, those get reported back to where they live. So those 5 employees wouldn't be reported in Roswell. But what is reported in Roswell are the 30 from this nursing home. The National Guard has been in and cleaned. They are on top of it, and I have not had any new news of any more outbreaks at that nursing home. Like I said, it's 199 beds. There were 30 that tested positive. Yes.
Mayor Henry, many of you may have heard that the CDC recently did a field study of 420 people in DeKalb and Fulton County that they selected at random. They visited their homes, took a blood test for the antibody test so that they could begin to project that over the population. I can tell you that Roswell did have representation in that sample. I was sitting out I believe it was last Saturday, a week ago, and watched the CDC truck pull up to my neighbor's house. A doctor and a phlebotomist with CDC vests got out, went in and did the random test with them. So we are included in that random antibody test that they'll project over the populations of our counties.
Thank you, Councilmember Tizer, and thank you for getting out that message, because we do have folks from the CDC that are coming around knocking on doors. So, you know, if you have someone knock on your door with a hazmat suit on, don't assume it's the Armageddon or the zombie apocalypse. It's just they're taking blood tests for this. So I would encourage everyone to participate. From everything that I've heard and that I've read, that the tracking on this has been extremely difficult. So anything that we can do to help the CDC track that, it's in our best interest. Additional comments from council? Okay, well, I hope that information was helpful to the public. The next item that we are going to run with is our fiscal year 2021 proposed budget. And I know that council has received some information early on or earlier today, and this will be going out to the public after this evening. And then we've also got a department head presentations tomorrow that we anticipate to last for probably, could be up to 4 hours. So I thank council for participating in that. And this is a good segue into, we've talked about the health issues with COVID-19, and now we're going to talk about the economic issues. And these economic issues are severe. We don't know yet how deep or how long this recovery is going to be, but we will present the budget and we'll go into it in more depth tomorrow. I'm not asking you for comments tonight. This is a presentation. So I would like you all to know, number one, that once again, Roswell is a great place to live because we are in a good position. We're dealing with this very solidly, and I would not want to live in another city in the state of Georgia right now because of the fact that we have the best folks. Our budget team, our finance team are top notch, but then also we've got the depth and breadth of 150 plus years of dealing with our financial situations in a very conservative situation, and that is serving us very well right now. So while this information is going to be very, what's the word? It's not going to be a pleasant surprise, but like I said, I know that you all will come out of this with the same thoughts that I've come out of it with, which is we're in a good position. So I will let, is Ryan going to present this or Harpreet? Harpreet. Thank you, Harpreet.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start sharing my screen now. Do you all see the slide?
Oh, there you go. Got it.
Okay, awesome. So we'll start off. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The last couple of months have been unprecedented for all of us. COVID-19 has changed our lives and our economy. We were in the process of putting together a proposed budget for fiscal year 2021, and we're almost there when the coronavirus pandemic hit and changed everything. The economy that was looking very positive a couple of months back is no longer so positive anymore. As a result, we had to go back and change all of our revenue projections, the budget numbers, and what we were planning to fund. As you all know, COVID-19 has hit our economy hard, and we will see a drop in our revenues. We do not know how long the effect of the pandemic will last, but we have made some educated assumptions based on research and what experts are saying to come up with a balanced budget for fiscal year 2021. And this proposed budget would not have been possible without the understanding, support, and cooperation of the department heads and their staff. So a big thank you to all of them. With that, it is my honor and privilege to present the mayor's proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. The presentation will start with the major highlights. Okay, let's see. So the presentation will start with the major highlights of the budget. I will talk about the impact of COVID-19 on our forecast and budget numbers, and some strategies that we have already adopted and some that we are planning to implement to ensure that we maintain the core services to our community. I will then discuss the process of developing the base budget, go over the general fund budget for the new fiscal year, discuss some of our other major funds, and end the presentation with some important dates that are coming up in the budget process. So first, the budget highlights. Over the past few months, the budget team has worked with the city administrator, Mr. Gary Palmer, the deputy city administrator, Mr. Michael Fisher, and Mayor Laurie Henry to develop a balanced budget for fiscal year 2021. And we are very pleased to present a balanced budget to council while maintaining our general fund reserve of 25%. This reserve of 25% will amount to $18.1 million for FY 2021. We have also set aside an additional reserve of $1.6 million for any financial uncertainty arising out of COVID-19 in FY 2021. And the thought process behind setting aside this additional reserve is that we do not yet know the full impact of the pandemic, and we do not know how much of a hit we are going to take in our revenues over the next few months or longer. So there are a lot of uncertainties involved, hence the decision to set aside this additional reserve of the 1.6 million. Due to the uncertainty surrounding the impact of COVID-19 on our revenues, this budget focuses on funding existing programs and services. The goal is to maintain and continue to provide core services to our Roswell community. Keeping that goal in mind, the proposed budget does not include an employee compensation increase, and most maintenance and one-time capital requests have been deferred. Budget staff will monitor revenues each month, and if our financial position improves, we will be able to fund some of these deferred items later in the fiscal year. You will see more about the funded and unfunded projects later in the presentation. Before I get into the details of the FY 2021 budget, I would like to present to all of you the impact that COVID-19 is having on the current year's budget and the new fiscal year. This slide here highlights the impact of the coronavirus on the US economy as a whole, based on a report
We've lost contact with you, so just on pause. Maurice is working on it.
Okay. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. All right, so I think I'll start off with this slide again. So before I get into the details of the fiscal year 2021 budget, I would like to present to all of you the impact that COVID-19 is having on the current year's budget and the new fiscal year. And this slide highlights the impact of the coronavirus on the US economy as a whole. Based on a report put together by the New York Times, the first quarter GDP dropped by 4.8%. And this is the worst quarterly decline since 2008, when we had the Great Recession. The GDP for the second quarter of 2020 is expected to decline by more than 30% because of the shelter-in-place order across the country. And this will be the largest decline since the Great Depression. And experts are predicting that it could take 1 to 2 years for the economy to come back to pre-pandemic levels. The next couple of slides offer a glimpse of the impact that the pandemic has had on consumer spending in some major sectors. Now, again, the charts that you see on this slide, these are taken from the same New York Times report. And it shows you the impact of the pandemic on auto sales, services, business investment, and the food industry, which have all declined significantly in the last quarter. This report here, which was put together by Factious, which is a company that provides insights on consumer behavior, shows how consumer spending has been changing on a weekly basis as compared to the previous year for the same weeks. And the numbers speak for themselves here. The damage caused by the coronavirus in some sectors is significant when compared to others, as can be seen from this particular slide. As I had mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, we had put together a revenue forecast for fiscal year 2021 by early February. The forecast at that time was very positive, but then COVID-19 changed everything and we had to revise our numbers. This table summarizes the proposed revenues for the general fund pre-COVID and also gives two scenarios for the revenues with the impact of COVID. So we have the best case scenario or scenario 1 in column 3, and the worst case scenario or the scenario number 2 in column 6. With the best case scenario, we will likely see a decline of $9.5 million in our general fund revenues in fiscal year 2021. And in the case of the second scenario, we forecast a decline of almost $15 million of the general fund revenues. And the way we have calculated the post-COVID, and I'm going to just go with sales tax revenue here, the way we have calculated the post-COVID sales tax revenues for FY 2021 is that we have reduced the revenues for the last quarter of the current fiscal year, which is fiscal year 2020, by 50%, and then decreased the revenues for fiscal year 2021 by 8% of the estimated revenues for fiscal year 2020. And the second scenario, we have reduced those numbers by 16%. And for the purposes of the fiscal year 2021 budget, we have used the revenue projections of scenario number 1, which is the column 3. And I'd like to mention here that an update of the revenue estimates for fiscal year 2020 will be provided at tomorrow's committee meeting. And some of the actions that we have taken in the current fiscal year to deal with the gap in revenues that is anticipated are listed on this particular slide in the red boxes. And we have already implemented a hiring freeze across all departments. However, this freeze does not apply to any critical positions. We have also reduced our part-time employee expense by 78% over the last few weeks. And a halt has been put on discretionary spending for all the departments. And the strategies that we are recommending for fiscal year 2021 to deal with the decline in revenues are shown in the brown boxes. And as I had mentioned on an earlier slide, there will be no salary increases for staff in the new fiscal year. No new position or program requests are being funded at this time. And most of the capital projects have been deferred. And budget staff will be monitoring the revenues every month and will provide quarterly updates to Mayor and Council. We now move on to the next section of the presentation where I will present the proposed budget. Here is a comparison of the proposed revenues against the approved revenues for fiscal year 2020 across all funds. There is a decline of $9 million in the revenues. For some reason, some of the data labels are not showing up, and I do not know why it is doing that, and I apologize for that. This loss in revenue is shown as a piece of the pie on the chart to the right, which is, the red dots, the red and white circles. So that portion, so that's a major portion of the decline, and that a major portion of that decline can be attributed to sales tax. And you will see the details of that in some of the later slides. Now, this chart here provides a 10-year history of revenues across all funds. You can see how the revenue had been trending upwards since fiscal year 2020. But COVID-19 has changed that to a downward trend in fiscal year 2021. This slide here shows the 10-year history of property tax revenue and millage rate. There is no increase proposed in the millage rate for fiscal year 2021. The fiscal year 2021 property tax revenue includes the debt service portion. And you will notice a slight decline being projected in the property tax revenue for fiscal year 2021. And that is due to the decrease in the title ad valorem tax, which is expected to decline due to the effect of COVID-19. Now, the sales tax revenue is the one revenue category that will take the biggest hit from COVID-19 for the city of Roswell. We expect to see a 10.4.
Harpreet, we lost you again. Stand tight. We'll get you back.
I don't know how long it should go.
Issues machine.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I apologize. I don't know why it keeps turning off muting on its own. So the sales tax revenue, as I was saying, is the one revenue category that will take the biggest hit from COVID-19. And we expect to see a 10.4% decline in sales tax revenue, both in the local option sales tax category and the T-SPLOST. And these numbers are in comparison to fiscal year 2020. So the T-SPLOST will take a decline or a decrease, a hit of about 14.3% as compared to the FY 2020 estimate, and 25.7% as compared to the FY 2020 approved numbers. So this next slide here gives you a picture of the proposed expenditures for FY 2021 across all funds. So the total proposed expenditures is $144.2 million. And this pie chart provides a breakdown by department with administration, public works, police, transportation, and recreation and parks making up most of that total. And the citywide cost of $2 million includes the funding for the partner organizations, the transfer in from the auto rental excise tax fund, and a transfer in from the hotel motel fund of about $400,000. This slide here gives you a 10-year history of the authorized full-time positions for the city of Roswell. And there is no change in our total FTE positions from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021. And as I mentioned earlier, a hiring freeze has been implemented for now, except for any critical positions. We now move to the general fund section. And I will start with the operating budget. The first step in developing the operating budget is to establish the base budget for the new fiscal year. And we start with the current year's approved budget and deduct all one-time initiatives that were approved in the prior budget. Any adjustments made to the budget at mid-year that have an ongoing operating impact are added to the base. And we also review the salaries and benefits and make adjustments based on the current roster. And finally, the budget staff reviews all the expenses. The proposed base budget for fiscal year 2021, as can be seen on this particular slide, is $1.2 million higher than the FY 2020 approved base, which is a 1.71% increase. So this increase is mainly due to the adjustment we have had to make to our defined benefit retirement plan. And the other factor contributing to the increase in the base amount is that in FY 2021, we will be funding the staffing of the heavy rescue fire truck at 100%. Now, this slide here provides a summary of the general fund proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. The beginning fund balance in the general fund is estimated to be approximately $3.8 million. Our proposed revenues for the new fiscal year are at $75.3 million. The proposed base budget is $71.4 million. The proposed operating requests or program changes total a little over $1.3 million, and the proposed maintenance capital totals a little over $3 million. The total proposed operating requests are $4,384,000, which takes our proposed operating budget to $75.7 million. So we are deficient in our revenues to cover the operating expenses by almost $500,000. And we will be using the unassigned fund balance to cover this deficiency. Historically, as per our budget principles, we have used current year revenues to cover the operating expenses, and any excess revenue has been used to fund one-time capital projects. However, due to the unprecedented circumstances, the $458,328 of operating costs this year is proposed to be funded using the unassigned fund balance. And this is just a temporary shift in our policy to balance our budget. The fund balance that has been used for one-time capital is about $1.7 million, which makes the total general fund proposed budget close to $77.5 million. Of the $3.8 million fund balance that is shown on the very top of this slide, $101,438 is being allocated for the increase in the general fund reserve by policy. The 25% reserve by policy amount for fiscal year 2021 will be a little over $18 million, and the amount is shown in the note below. $1,596,325 is being set aside as a reserve for any financial uncertainty arising as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, like I had mentioned on a previous slide. This particular slide here gives you a picture of the general fund revenues, the proposed general fund revenues for fiscal year 2021, as compared to the revenues that were approved for fiscal year 2020. And you will see that the major decline is in sales tax revenue, and then we also see a small decline in business tax revenues as well. The general fund operating expenditures for fiscal year 2021 totaled $77.5 million, with police, recreation and parks, administration, fire, and transportation making up a major portion of that. And the citywide portion includes $396,000 in some partner organization requests. And those are the Roswell Historical Society, the Roswell Arts Fund, the HRBP, and Roswell Inc. Moving on to the general fund request. And we will start with the funded operating request. And as I mentioned early on, this year's budget is a very lean budget. And since we do not know what the full impact of COVID-19 is going to be, we have taken a very cautious approach towards putting together this budget. And the aim of this budget is to focus on providing core services to our residents and businesses. And over the next few slides, you will see the few items that have been proposed to be funded for fiscal year 2021. So for the police department, we have a total of $156,333 being funded. And the list of requests being funded is shown on this slide. I will not read each request line by line, but I'll just highlight some of the main ones. And then for the Recreation and Parks Department, the Recreation Participation Fund is being supported by the General Fund in the amount of $784,872. Of this total, the indirect cost charged to the fund is $434,872. And this is the cost of the support that General Fund provides to the Rec Participation Fund in terms of legal services, IT services, finance, like accounts payable, accounts receivable, etc. And this is consistent with how we treat the other funds. And then the net impact of this portion to the general fund is zero. The second component of this request is the $350,000 for the general fund supporting certain recreation programming. And more details on this will be provided at tomorrow's budget work session. So the net cost to the general fund will be the $350,000 only, and not the additional $434,872. Moving to the maintenance capital request. So among the funded maintenance capital requests, we have $1.2 million for the citywide network slash the fiber switch replacement. This will be a lease purchase and is needed at this time since we have most of staff working from home to ensure consistent and reliable connectivity. And we also have the lease purchase of the replacement of a fire vehicle at a cost of $1.4 million, and the replacement of PPE at a cost of $122,385. And then the road resurfacing has been funded at $250,000 at this point. In the one-time capital requests, we have funded $100,000 for the adult recreation center window and siding replacement, as that is in poor condition and it will cost us much more if we postpone it. Hence, we've decided to fund this particular request. We have also funded $1.75 million of the $2.5 million for the final design contract modification of the historic Gateway project. The other $750,000 will be funded using impact fees. We now move to the unfunded request section. And this next section of the presentation will cover the unfunded requests in the general fund. And all the unfunded requests have been categorized by the critical success factor that they aim to achieve. The department that has submitted that particular request is denoted by an acronym before the description. For instance, administration department is denoted by AD, community development is denoted by CD, finance is denoted by F, and so on and so forth. I will not go through each request as there are many of them. I will highlight a few big ones in each category. So the total unfunded operating requests for fiscal year 2021 amounts to over $4.1 million. The first critical success factor category is being a collaborative, innovative, and nimble city government. And the total unfunded amount in this particular category is a little over $1.4 million. So you'll see that all new position requests have been unfunded as we have implemented a hiring freeze at this time. And among them is a request from the fire department for 21 full-time station captain positions that would cost the city over $1.1 million. In the proactive infrastructure and asset inventory category, the total amount of unfunded requests is $262,500 and includes requests for additional funding for repair and maintenance of various city facilities. And as I said, I will not be reading through each one of these since the department heads will be going through all of these items tomorrow at the budget work session, which will be a public meeting, so everybody will be able to view that. For the exceptional livability category, we have a total unfunded amount of $423,674, and it includes requests for new positions and maintenance of right-of-way and some other smaller items. In the effective governance category, the total unfunded requests are $1.7 million. And the biggest unfunded request here on this slide is the salary increase for employees and some new position requests. On this particular slide, there are some more position requests that have not been funded in the proposed budget for various departments. And then here on this slide, we have about 3 requests. 2 fall into the charming and thriving downtown category, totaling $31,000, which are basically asking for additional funding for security, for part-time and overtime for the events and meetings in the amount of $11,000. And then we have a $20,000 amount being requested to increase funding for holiday lighting and tree replacement for the historic Roswell Town Square. And then $15,000 that has been unfunded for the replacement of tourniquets for the police department. And then we also have 2 requests from the Recreation and Parks Department for positions that have also been unfunded in the Accessible and Unique Parks and Natural Resources category, which totals an amount of $215,793. Moving on to the unfunded maintenance capital requests. So the total unfunded for maintenance capital requests is $7.1 million. Among the maintenance capital requests, most of which meet the critical success factor of having a proactive infrastructure and asset inventory. The biggest one is the maintenance of the citywide facilities at an amount of over $2.5 million. The planned maintenance of our facilities is being deferred at this time due to the financial constraints caused by COVID-19. And there are other replacement programs listed on this slide, which have also not been funded at this time. There are several other maintenance programs that are unfunded at this time, like the medical equipment replacement, the citywide radio replacement, the motorcycle replacement, the bicycle patrol replacement, which you see on this particular slide. And then we also have the Recreation and Parks Maintenance Program, the playground replacements, the maintenance of historic house properties, and some other small equipment that is not being funded. And then we have also unfunded $2.75 million of the road resurfacing program. So the total request for the road resurfacing was a $3 million request from the Transportation Department. And as I had mentioned on one of the previous slides, where we discussed the funded request, so $250,000 is being funded, but 2.75 of that $3 million has not been funded right now. And then we also have the bridge maintenance program and a couple of other smaller ones that have not been funded right now. And then we also have the system-wide park improvements in the amount of $100,000 that has not been funded, and trail repairs in the amount of $15,000, which has not been funded either. Sorry, $50,000. So we start off the list of unfunded requests for one-time capital requests here now. So the list of unfunded one-time capital requests, again, is very long, and the total unfunded for one-time capital is a little over $21.1 million. And some of these requests are the replacement of Fire Station 2, the construction of the new 911 emergency communication center. And I'm just hitting on the big ones right now. I'm not going through the other ones. So there are several other requests that have not been funded, as you can see on this particular slide and in the next slides that will come up. So the replacement of seats at the Cultural Arts Center has also been unfunded. The right-of-way acquisition and construction of the turn lane at Woodstock Road and Highway 92. The construction of the new Fire Station 8. Then again, the right-of-way acquisition and construction for the improvement of the King Road turn lane. These have also not been funded, in addition to some other requests on the slide. And then the Pine Grove Road and Magnolia Street corridor study and phase 2 of Sun Valley Drive have also not been funded in this proposed budget. We have also not funded several other projects like the fiber connectivity projects, the strategic master plan for recreation and parks, and then the purchase of additional automated license plate recognition device, ballistic shields for police, the City Hall cubicle renovation, the G.ARC connected vehicles initiative. So these have all been unfunded in the proposed budget. And then again, the expansion of the physical activity center is unfunded. The sidewalk connectivity program and the design of the Riverside Road Complete Street project have also not been funded in this proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. Now we move to some of the other major funds. The first one that we have is the solid waste fund. And as you will see here, so the proposed revenues for fiscal year 2021 for the solid waste fund are $14.5 million. And the proposed expenditures are $14.3 million. The approved rate increase for fiscal year 2021 for solid waste services is 3%. And the projected FY 2021 ending fund balance over policy based on all the requests on the revenues that we estimate and the requests that have been funded is going to be $2.86 million. And so these are some of the funded requests in the solid waste fund. So we have 3.33 million worth of projects being funded. The first one is the residential rear loading garbage truck replacement for $230,000. And then we also have the transfer station improvements and expansion for $3.1 million that has been funded. And the $3.1 million for the transfer station improvements and expansion is going to be on the basis of a GFA loan. We've assumed taking a GFA loan for the full amount. And so that's shown here. Among the unfunded requests in the operating, we have a few. We have a position request that has been unfunded, and of course the salary increase, as I mentioned early on. And they have some internal position allocation changes, which is also not being funded in the proposed budget. And then the unfunded capital, we have a total of $498,825 that is unfunded. And among them, you see the list of items that have been unfunded. We have the baler for the recycling center, the renovation of the City Hall Suite 235 cubicle, the replacement of the front loader garbage truck, and the replacement of the recycling center semi-trailer program as well. The next fund is the water and sewer fund. And here, the proposed revenues for this fund are estimated at $4.7 million. And the proposed expenditures are at $3.6 million. The approved rate increase for this particular fund for 2021 is 4%. And the projected FY 2021 ending fund balance over policy based on the revenues and the expenses is going to be a little over $1.8 million. And among the funded requests, so a total of $252,000 is being funded for the water fund. And the items or the requests being funded at this time are the replacement of large meters, and the water line replacement program is only being partially funded at $200,000 in the proposed budget. And of course, we have the replacement of the SCADA communication system, which has also been funded. Among the unfunded operating, we have a couple of positions that have not been funded, the employee salary increase, and again, the position allocation changes, which remain unfunded. And among the capital requests, the total amount unfunded is $348,703. And among them, we have the renovation of the cubicle, the replacement of a service truck, and then the other portion, the unfunded portion of the water line replacement of $200,000. Moving on to the stormwater fund, here the proposed revenues for fiscal year 2021 are $3.3 million, and the proposed expenditures are at $2.9 million. The approved rate increase for fiscal year 2021 for the stormwater fund is at 2.5%, and the projected fiscal year 2021 ending fund balance over policy is a little over $1.1 million for this particular fund. And then among the funded requests, we have the stormwater master project list, which has been partially funded again. Typically, we have funded this project at around $1 million, but this year for fiscal year 2021, we are funding it only at $500,000. And then we have the unfunded operating requests at a total of $2,851. That's the net effect of the two that you see, the employee salary increase and the position allocation changes. And then we have the capital requests, which are unfunded at a total amount of $583,350. And among them, we have the renovation of the cubicle, the replacement of some large equipment, and of course, the unfunded portion of the stormwater master project list at $550,000. Then we move to the Recreation Participation Fund. Here, the proposed revenues for fiscal year 2021 are at $5.8 million, and the proposed expenditures at $5.9 million. And the use of fund balance, since the revenues in this particular fund are going to be lower than anticipated because a lot of the programs have had to be canceled due to the expansion of the physical activity center. Next, we have the E911 fund. Here, the proposed revenues for fiscal year 2021 are at $2.4 million, and the proposed expenditures is $2.8 million. And then again here, the use of fund balance is at close to $400,000, so it's $398,256. And the projected ending fund balance for fiscal year 2021 for the E911 fund is estimated to be around $90,000. Next up, we have the Hotel Motel Fund. So here, because of, again, COVID-19, our hotel revenues are going to take a hit. And so based on our forecast and based on discussions that we have had, the FY 2021 proposed revenues for this fund are at $1.3 million, and the proposed expenditures is at $1 million. And the ending fund balance is projected to be at $390,620, of which the restricted portion is going to be $243,750, which means that portion of the money can only be used towards certain programs for which that money is allotted for or allocated for. And then we have the unrestricted portion of $146,870, which could be used at the discretion of a mayor and council towards any projects that they like. And here is the breakdown of the Hotel Motel Fund revenues for the three major categories. So the tourism, conventions, and trade shows, which is 43.75%, the revenues in that category are expected to be $568,750. And all of that revenue goes towards to the Convention and Visitors Bureau of Roswell. And then we have the TPD portion, which is expected to be at $243,750. And the unrestricted portion, those revenues are expected to come in at $487,500. And of that, we have, in this particular proposed budget, we have transferred $400,000 to the general fund. which was shown on the previous slides. And then we have the auto rental excise tax fund. So the beginning balance for this particular fund is estimated to be $70,575. And the revenues that we anticipate for this fund are $250,000. And of the $250,000 plus the beginning fund balance together, so we are planning to transfer $300,000 to the general fund for promotion of industry, trade, and commerce. And this was again shown on one of the previous slides for the transfer amount. So the impact fee fund here includes funded requests in the amount of $1.65 million for the new fire station number 8. The historic gateway project, and the new 911 emergency communications center. And we are setting aside the available funding for these projects because they are in the design and site selection stage. And this does not prevent mayor and council from moving the funding to other projects as they deem necessary, at a later stage. And then we have the fleet services fund. Here, the funded request total an amount of $38,000, and that is the request for adding an on-site parts room service in collaboration with NAPA. That will cost $38,000 annually. And among the unfunded requests, we have a part-time position that was requested, then the salary increase, and the position allocation changes of $106,812, which is all unfunded. So that's a total amount of $145,970. And then in the unfunded capital, we have $25,000 worth of requests not being funded, and that is the tool and auto repair equipment replacement program. Next up, we have the partner organizations. So this year, all the partner organizations have been funded at lower amounts. Their budgets have been reduced. They were asked to revisit their budget requests after COVID-19 hit, and they did submit revised budget numbers to us. And here you see the funded and the unfunded amounts for each of the partner organizations for fiscal year 2021. And as you can see on this slide, Roswell Arts Fund has been funded at $50,000, Roswell Inc., $290,000, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, $568,750. The Roswell Historical Society has been funded at $30,000, and the Historic Roswell Beautification Project has been funded at $26,000. And below, you see the unfunded amounts for each of these partner organizations. Roswell Arts Fund, $200,000. Roswell Inc., excuse me, $197,200. The Roswell Historical Society is unfunded at $20,000. And the Historic Roswell Beautification Project unfunded $21,650. Excuse me. So there are a few more steps remaining in our budget process before it is adopted. And tomorrow there is a budget work session at noon where department heads will present each of their requests, both funded and unfunded. So please tune into that. On May 26th, we will have the first reading of the budget, and the second reading will be held at the Mayor and Council meeting on June 8th. And as you will see, the millage rate hearings will happen at a later date once we have the digest numbers from Fulton County. So please look out for those dates as well. And also, I'd like to mention that we will have the proposed budget book posted on our website, hopefully tonight or by tomorrow latest. And I'm very proud to say here that Roswell will have an interactive digital version of the budget book for the very first time. And I'd like to also mention here, highlight that we are one of the very few cities in the US to have published an interactive digital version of the budget book. the first in the South and the sixth in all of the United States. So I think it is a very proud moment for our entire team. And with the need for social distancing, the timing is perfect. Residents will now be able to drill down into the budget and view the data in different formats by clicking on the charts. And I'd like to mention here that my team members, Lacey and Lynn, have put in a tremendous amount of time and effort to make this possible. So a big thank you to them. And the link to this interactive version will be available on the website along with the PDF version of the book. So that is the end of my presentation. And I will stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you, Humphrey. As usual, you all have done a great job with this, and I thank Gary Palmer and the whole team for this. It's just, you've done great work, and I know that you've looked under every rock and you've considered every single thing that we can possibly consider. And thank you for the interactive budget as well. Does council have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Tizer.
I'd just like to make a couple of comments. First of all, Ryan, Harpreet, and your teams, what an awesome job that you've done in a very, very difficult situation. I'd like to share with you that I can feel the pain. I remember doing the same thing back in 2008 when business was humming along, and then all of a sudden 1 week there wasn't any, and whole budgets had to be redone at that time. You know, you can't have a between 11% and 18% reduction in revenue without a significant amount of adjustments in pain as you've presented here in this budget. You know, frankly, you know, it's possible that you could see a scenario where we'd exceed that 18%. So you're looking at, you know, $10 to $15 million that you're trying to find a way to deal with. And I think you've done overall a very good job at presenting us with something. I'm also pleased to see that the unfunded lists are clear and understandable. There may be some opportunities, as I've said before, for grants, potential shovel-ready federal money that could come soon. And I think you've laid that out in a way that it would be very easy for us to move forward and ask for outside funding if that should happen. And I think one of the other comments that I'd like to make is I think while nobody likes to see maintenance budgets cut the way we've had to cut them, I think you've laid it out nicely that if revenue does snap back, if there are amounts that come forward, we'll be able to adjust those in those quarterly reviews that you mentioned. And so while it looks like we've taken all of the maintenance and all those important repairs out, I think as we see what happens over the next few months, we'll easily, you know, we'll understand where we might be able to add them back. And finally, it's difficult sometimes to understand governmental fund accounting, where enterprise funds, stand alone and you don't mix money between those funds unless, there's some terrible desire. The fact that we have $18.1 million in reserve, plus another 1.6 that you've added, is absolutely critical. If you look at that difference between a potential 15 million at 18% and the 10 million that you've got, as the mayor said earlier, we're in a reasonably safe position should even the worst case hit. So we've got, a lot of things to try and digest. We've seen this budget now for just a couple of few short hours. And so I look forward to tomorrow's budget session at noon, where I'm sure we'll have lots of questions at that time. And with that, I don't want to ask a whole lot of questions tonight because this is sort of an overview presentation. We'll see a lot more in the days to come. So thank you very much, Harpreet, Ryan, Gary, and the team.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Tizer. And one of the takeaways this evening is that, and we'll drill down into this tomorrow, but in the past, we have always historically had a mid-year budget and an annual budget. This year, we will have quarterly budgets, so we can adjust it up. If things are looking good, we can adjust it down. And the other thing I would like to say as well is that our partner organizations have agreed, and they understand that this is a prudent course to take, which is we will be making quarterly payments to them as well. So that way, if we are able, we can up those quarterly payments. When we're not able, we can lower those, because as I said before, we don't know the length and the depth of this, and we just have to be ready to pivot. So thank you. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. Harpreet, great job presenting, really fantastic job, and really, and it definitely shows all your hard work, yours, Ryan, the entire finance department. So really appreciate all that you did to really put this all together. I know that I have a number of questions at the department level, which I'll definitely save for the department heads tomorrow. Will there also be an opportunity tomorrow for some higher level questions that aren't specific to an individual department?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Excellent. Then I look forward to it. And again, great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments, questions from council? Not seeing hands up. Do we have any comments, questions from the public? No comments, questions from the public. So the last item that I've got, it's not on the agenda, but I would like to bring up this evening is I would like to request that the council consider, I'm moving some things out of order here, but I would like the council to consider to defer on the budget items 9 through 17. And also I would support a deferral on these items, but I would only support that deferral if we extend the moratorium through June 14th. So I would like to get July 14th, I'm sorry. I would like to get questions, comments from council on deferring 9 through 17 with the caveat that we extend the moratorium through July 14th. So questions, yes, Councilmember Tizer.
There it is. No questions. Just one question to just to confirm. When we say multi-unit, we're referring to apartments versus owner-occupied. And with the answer to that, I would make the motion which you requested.
Mr. Davidson, definition of multifamily.
It does not include townhouses, but it could include condos, I believe. I don't know if Jackie or Alice.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Yes, it does include condos.
Thank you, Jackie. Hello, Jackie and Lenore. Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would like to discuss item 15 to 17 of today's agenda and make a motion.
And you are welcome to make comments on those 3 items at this time.
Okay, so we start with item number 15 of Community Development Department. So you want to read the item, Mayor, or like we normally do?
No, sir. I've asked for your consideration of a motion to defer 9 through 17, and I have put those together along with the caveat that we that I would support that as long as we extended the moratorium to July 14th.
So I would like to mention that item 15, 16, 17 have nothing to do with the UDC. It's all about the discussion and a vote on a public, open, transparent approval process for convenience stores with gas stations, self-storage, and car washes. So it's nothing to do with the UDC improvements. It's all about to improve the public, open, transparent approval process of these three heavy, intense usage.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. Councilmember Judy.
Let's see here. All right. Despite my feelings about the individual amendments, there's three reasons why these should be deferred tonight. And one, PC heard these last Tuesday. Only two passed by a 4-3 margin out of all of them. And the last three that he's speaking about were denied unanimously by the PC. Transparency is the second thing. If we're going to talk about transparency, we're in the middle of a global pandemic where people are worried about their own survival, about their jobs, about their businesses. They don't have time to watch us right now. And if we really want input from the community, then we defer these items to where we're out of a state of emergency, which we're under executive order through June 12th of a state of emergency. This is a tone-deaf legislation with 30% unemployment, people dying, businesses closing, people hungry. This is not something to speak about tonight. We're not supposed to be talking about banning car washes, gas stations, and storage units. We just saw a budget that decreased our part-time employees by 78%. We saw numbers that talked about the worst decline in Q1 since the Great Recession, and the worst decline in Q2 since possibly the Great Depression. Nobody's building these things right now. They're worrying about where they're eating, where they're getting food, and their jobs. So therefore, the prudent thing to do and the thing to do for our community is to continue to talk about what we can do to get our budget straight and to defer these till after June 12th when we're out of a state of emergency. I would support the motion to defer these till later on after the state of emergency is over.
Thank you, Councilmember Judy. Additional comments from council. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So these three items are very simple, have nothing to do with the description that Councilmember Judy just mentioned. It's very simple, and we're here to govern all aspects of government, all of them. We can, like I always say, walk and chew a gum. So is these three simple improvement to the process of approval of three intense usage in the city, where we have data, what happened with the current flaw on the process we have. And I think that we can spend more time going back and forth than voting on these items. So it's just an improvement to the process. I think that the people of Roswell all the time are looking for us to improve the process and expect us to improve the process and make it more public oriented process. And we have cases in the city that this is not the case. So I think it's very simple. If you want to make it, anybody wants to make it more complicated, feel free, go ahead. But it's very simple, straightforward items that I'm bringing forward to make the process of these three usage more public oriented and transparent.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. Additional, yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. I definitely appreciate the healthy discussion. So I just want to share my thoughts on this, which is, first of all, these are certainly, I think, amendments that have been shown. It's to protect the residents. It's what residents want, and they're in really the possibilities for future development. That being said, I do believe in that items 9 through 15. I believe there are protections in place given the extended moratorium proposal. I think those can certainly make sense and can certainly wait a month or so. I guess my concern would be regarding some of the last few. It's from what I believe I've seen out there is the possibility I've seen in some down economies where there is a really large push with storage units and potentially with car washes. And this is not to ban car washes. This is not to ban storage facilities. This is just to ensure that there's a public process, that residents do have the ability to give input. We've certainly seen multiple situations where that was not the case. And there was definitely some backlash, understandably, wishing that residents actually had a voice. I also do want to clarify as well that we need to really just really look to the residents. When we hear and we see it was discussed with that the planning commission vote on some of those last items. Some really important legislation that actually that I brought forward 4 years ago in 2016 was to really protect our suburban residential areas. It was to prevent the highest density from going into our suburban residential areas. That was something that Planning Commission unanimously opposed. That was something that almost half of council opposed. But nonetheless, years later, as I talked to many different residents, I don't hear anyone saying they wish they had a lot higher density coming into their neighborhoods. So I do think it is important we're looking really long term. As I mentioned, I think the majority of these absolutely it makes sense. It can make sense to defer it a month. Again, I don't think it's necessary, but I certainly understand that. But I just hope we can make sure that we are putting protections in place and really thinking long term.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. And let me just say this, that car washes, gas stations, and storage facilities are in our highest intensity uses. And I am not sure how many opportunities there are for the development community to take advantage of those sites. But I will say that I feel comfortable and that we defer this for a month. I also feel comfortable because I, for one, especially after listening to the Planning Commission minutes, I am very, very concerned and alarmed that these text amendments have not been presented well, they've not been written well, and the Planning Commission did not, I don't want to cast aspersions, but did not understand or realize what they were looking at the time. So there was a lot of confusion involved, is what I'm trying to say. And I, for one, have already dug in my heels and I am looking at these. I've been printing out minutes. I want to understand every aspect of what we're doing here. And part of that is the alarm that the Planning Commission sent out. And I, for one, need to look at that all very carefully. And to Councilmember Zapata's points on the last three, the convenience stores, self-storage, and the car washes, I support completely that we as a council look at those and they be changed to a conditional use. But like I said, given the gravity of the situation we're in and the time I personally need to look at these items, I would appreciate it if everyone would consider a deferral. But I am in support of these text amendments. Councilmember Judy.
Can I make a motion then?
Are there additional comments from council? And I will defer to Councilmember Zapata to make a motion. If he chooses not to, then I'll open it up to the floor. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. The item 15, 16, and 17, they're very straightforward. I listened 4 hours of Planning Commission discussion. Unfortunately, they didn't get into technical discussion on this. They put it toward the end of their agenda, and they just move it on with very quick without any technical discussion and value added. So this is those three proposals, item 15, 16, 17, they're very straightforward. If some members of this council do not believe on the importance of public and elected officials' input during a public approval process for the construction of a convenience store with gas station, with self-storage or car washes, then do not support the proposed legislation for conditional use. This proposal tonight is just to force these projects to come in front of mayor and council and public opinion and review. We have a case on Holcomb Bridge of a car wash that was approved without any mayor and council and public input. We have a gas station going on Alpharetta Highway who was approved by staff without review. Actually, we denied, but then they found a way around to get it done. So again, didn't come to mayor and council and public discussion and review. So it's very straightforward. No, I don't see anything to dance around here. It's just if you support the process, the new process that I'm proposing, or you don't support the new process that I'm supporting. So it's not much more science behind that. This kind of project will be able to come to Roswell, but then will be reviewed by mayor and council and the public. So that is the only difference with this conditional use that I'm proposing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. And might I add that I'm offended by your comments? And the reason why I am offended by your comments is I support the public process. I am asking for a deferral of 30 days. So please do not sit there and accuse me of opposing public process and public input and transparency because I would like to defer this for 30 days. Please don't go down that road again. Are there any other comments? And I'm assuming Councilmember Zapata, you do not wish to make a motion.
Yeah, I don't want to do the motion you just proposed.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. Do we have a motion?
Yes, ma'am. I propose to defer this till after the state emergency is over and the city after June the 12th. And extend the moratorium to July the 14th to give us
So
time.
your motion is to extend the moratorium to July 14th. And when is our council meeting in 30 days? Mr. Davidson, Mr. Palermo, Mr. somebody. When's their next meeting?
Judy.
Okay, might I suggest in your motion, Councilmember Judy, that you stipulate June 8th on the deferral and the moratorium extended to July 14th? Would
Okay,
you accept
we're
that?
in a state of emergency on June 12th.
That the state of emergency might continue.
Okay, well,
Or it could be lifted before then.
okay.
We don't know.
So I will do that right now because now it's not the right time, and to say that I'm not for a public transparent process and that the planning commission moved it along just because they put it at the end of the meeting is not true. So therefore I would like to make the motion to extend the moratorium to July 14th and delay these what is it, 9 through 17 until June the 8th.
Okay, we could also do it till June 22nd.
Yeah, that's the one.
I'd rather do it till past the
Yeah,
state of
and I'm good with that.
June the
It's
22nd.
basically a month away.
Okay.
Councilmember Wilsey?
Yes, just a question. I assume that after the state of the emergency, we will once again be able to meet in person. I would just like to move it to a time when we're actually meeting in person and can have an in-person public input opportunity.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that because I hate these virtual meetings. But I don't know how long they're going to last, so I don't want to postpone it indefinitely.
All right, well, I will second the motion.
Okay. Seconded, a motion by Councilmember Judy, seconded by Councilmember Wilsey. Are there additional comments from council? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. And it's Councilmember Judy, Councilmember Wilsey, Councilmember Tizer in favor. All those opposed would be Councilmember Zapata, Councilmember Palermo, and Councilmember Hall. I will vote in favor of the motion and we will defer this. Thank you. The next item on the agenda would be the Transportation Department. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry it's a little dark. I don't have a lamp in this room. I had to had my son bring one in. Okay, item number 4 is the approval of bridge aesthetics for 3 new bridges over Georgia 400 in conjunction with the Georgia Department of Transportation's Express Lanes project and the City of Roswell Big Creek Parkway project. This will be presented by Director Mohammed Raff. Director of Transportation.
Director Rouse, are you in the wings? Well, hey there.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. So can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll just take a minute to share my screen. I have the slides for tonight. Can you all see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, so that's today is the bridge aesthetics topic. So the three bridges we are going to be talking about are the Georgia 400 Holcomb Bridge interchange that the city partnered with GDOT for it to be reconstructed as part of GDOT's Express Lane project. Next bridge is the Express Lane Bridge that GDOT is going to be building again as part of the Express Lane project. It's between the Holcomb Bridge interchange and the river. State DOT is paying for that. The city is only paying for the upgrades like the statics and stuff. And then the third bridge over 400 is the Big Creek Parkway Bridge. So the city's T-Splosh dollars are going to be paying for that project. We're talking about all three bridges tonight. So again, this is the same timeline as last time. So we had a work session back in October, a public survey in November, and then a committee meeting. And at the December 9th city council meeting, the city council made the decision to pick and choose certain aesthetic elements to be built as part of GDOT's Express Lane project. So since then, we have been communicating back and forth with GDOT. They have accepted everything that the city suggested. All they're asking for now is just give them some details on about three of those items. That's what we are going to be talking about tonight. Rest, everything they have accepted. So we have already gone through the public in the beginning of April. We got about 645 responses. I shared that information with you at the work session on April 27th. So tonight we are hoping to get the decisions from you so we could communicate back to GDOT by their deadline, which is June 3rd. They want to move forward with their procurement process. So they need all the details of whatever the city wants added to their Express Lane project. And during the summertime, we'd be working on an IGA with GDOT. So you'll see the terms and conditions of that through the summertime. So again, just to refresh our memory, this is the Holcomb Bridge Bridge. Just note the fence, how it looks, and the arches on the top. This is just, one, and you have the options to pick and choose what you want here. This is just a graphic to show you what we're talking about. The last slide, this one is the view from Georgia 400 as you're driving underneath Holcomb Bridge. This one is the bird's eye view looking at Holcomb Bridge. So you see two direction of traffic with the pedestrian amenities in the middle on the inside of both bridges. So it's two separate bridges here, if you note, because in between the two bridges, there is that area for future transit options, transit infrastructure for future. So it's two different bridges on Holcomb Bridge. And if you see the fences that we have been talking about, they're only on the outside of the two bridges. All the pedestrian amenities like the trail, they are on the inside of both of these bridges. So this is the Holcomb Bridge future interchange. And then this is the Express Lane Bridge. This is looking north. So the access is only going south and coming from the south. So a couple of things you could notice is that the pedestrian amenities, the sidewalk trail is only on the north side of the bridge, not on the other side, because that conflicts with the vehicles. The length of fence, of course, is a little bit less here, because there's this two ramps coming in. So just to make note of those couple of things. And this is again the express lane. Trail is only on the one side, and these are just 2 lane, 1 lane in each direction. So some of the questions, some of the information you asked at the work session, we have gathered that information for you tonight. So next couple of slides are the answers to your questions. So talking about the look of the fence, the first thing was this squared look, which is the top right slide, and then the vertical look, which is the bottom left slide. So the majority of the public in the survey from last month supported the squared look to the top right, and there's negligible cost difference between the two. So this is where we need your decision. This is one of those things where we need your decision tonight, whether the city would want to have the squared or the vertical fence design. The next one is the sandstone look. So if you look at the top picture, you see those white areas in between. So that's the sandstone look, and on the bottom, it's all brick form lining. So that's the difference between the two. I can tell you that majority of the public supported the top picture, the sandstone look, and that just happens to save us about $15,000 per bridge. So not having to do that additional work to make it the brick look saves about $15,000 per bridge. And that's what the public liked as well. So that's one. And then the next one is the arch on top of each of the bridge panels. So the cost of this arch, you could see the top right, there is the arch, and on the bottom left, the arch is not there. So the cost of to provide this arch on each of the panel here, so you're seeing one panel here on the top right picture. The cost of that is $21,000, and these are again, estimated numbers. So the majority of the public actually supported these arches, but these are about 21,000 per arch panel. So just to give you a quick example, say if we wanted to do 4 arches per bridge, like 2 on each side of each of the bridges, that would be a total of 12 arches, and at 21,000 a piece, the total could be around $250,000 for 3 bridges if we provided 4 arches at each of the 3 bridges. So one thing you wanted to see is the cost comparison. I hope you are able to see the numbers here. So back in December, on December 9th City Council meeting, the options you approved, many of them were visual, but many of them were also some future enabling of some of the other stuff. And the number the estimate that was provided to you was 2.1 million for the 2 bridges, the Holcomb Bridge interchange and the express lane bridges. So this is a breakdown of that estimated 2.1 million number. So on the left, you see the Holcomb Bridge interchange. So all the lines that you see green, those are kind of the decided upon back in December. That's what you wanted. GDOT has agreed. So I think we're good there, but the lines that are orange are the ones we are discussing today. So on the left matrix, I'm just looking at the first orange line is that assuming the sandstone look, we just reduced the 15,000 out of the parapet wall total cost, which is the $60,000. So we actually reduced by 15,000 if we actually provide the sandstone look. The next orange line is the fencing, the squared versus vertical. So the cost of the fence is $750,000, and that is not changed if you choose the square or the vertical. The cost stays the same. The arches, so we did not include any arches here in this estimate. So no arches, just a flat top for overall panels. So with that, the total aesthetics cost, the upgrade cost of the aesthetics for Holcomb Bridge interchange is a little over $1 million. And same on the express lane side, you could see the sandstone reduces the 15,000. The fence here is the total cost is about $415,000, and not including any arches. The total of the upgrades of the aesthetics on the express lane bridge is a little over $1 million. So the total comes out to be around 2.1 million. So those are the 2 bridges. This is where we owe the response to GDOT by June 3rd. But since through these discussions in the past few months, the council's desire was to have that unique Roswell look for all 3 bridges. So the conversations we have had before is to have similar bridge aesthetics at the Big Creek Parkway Bridge. That's a project that we are building using T-Splosh dollars. So In the initial estimates, you see the 2.5 million number on the left. That was in the initial estimates of the statics on that bridge. And on the right in the picture, you see the look, the visual of those graphics that were at the time, approved by the council as part of the pattern book. That's how they wanted to see the statics on the Big Creek Parkway Bridge, and of course that went through its public information and public input process back in the day. It's about several years ago. So with the recent guidance from the city council in the last few months, we wanted to make it look like similar to the other two bridges. So whatever you decide there, we would need your decision to tell us that that's what you want to do here as well. So I am going to be providing some details on that as well. So our goal was to have that similar Roswell look for all three bridges that go over Georgia 400. So this is the same slide. So the graphic on the right, the aesthetics as of today or as were approved several years ago. But if you decide tonight that you want to make them similar to the other two bridges, this is what the Big Creek Parkway could look like. So the changes really, it's of course big differences in the monuments and the fencing, and then another difference is if you can look closely, I'm sorry, the planters here along the bridge versus the brick wall to separate between the pedestrians and the vehicular traffic. So that was the couple of main things that are now different. So, but this is the look that the other two bridges will have. So the cost, like I mentioned, the prior estimated cost for the other aesthetics was $2.5 million, but this new number with these aesthetics, it's going to be about 1.7 million for the Big Creek Parkway Bridge. So this is just another look. We have the trail with that brick wall, and then a bike lane, which is unique just to this bridge, and then the 2 lanes of traffic total. So there's a graphic on the side. It's the same, the pedestrian pathway, the wall, and then the bridge with the arches and the squared look of the fence. And on the left-hand side, again, this is the same graphic, same matrix, but with the numbers for this bridge. So again, assuming the sandstone look, we reduce the cost of the outer barrier walls by $15,000. The cost of the fence here, the total is 1.2 million. It's a longer bridge. So the total cost of doing this fence is $1.2 million, and arches are not included in this estimate. But as I mentioned before, that's 21,000 per panel. So we could add a few, add them all on top of all panels, or not have any. So the total comes down to about $1.7 million for this Big Creek Parkway Bridge. I'm sorry, there was a question. I didn't see that.
Mr. Rapp, are you finished with your presentation?
No, I'm not. I just have a couple more, I think.
Please continue.
Thank you. So really, actually, it's the last one. So what we need tonight from you is to approve the similar aesthetics to be applied to Big Creek Parkway, which actually reduces the estimated cost from 2.5 million to 1.7 million. And then the immediate approval we need is the decision on the 3 things I mentioned, and they are listed here as bullets for the Holcomb Bridge interchange and the Express Lane Bridge, because we need to provide that input to GDOT by June 3rd. And we're going to need a couple of weeks to prepare the details of whatever you decide tonight with the help of our consultant, which is our program manager for T-Splost Atkins. So we need your decision on the 3 bullets I have listed here and explained in the slides prior. So that's actually all I had on my slides, Mayor.
Thank you. Questions from council. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So I have a question before I'll get into some thoughts. So the Big Creek Parkway Bridge, that's something where I remember with the previous council, so it was either in 2018 or 2019, it was unanimous where actually we had discussed putting a median in it because there are safety benefits and other benefits with the median. I vividly remember this as well because what we had discussed was the median not having planters because of those ongoing maintenance costs. But that was something that we had unanimously voted at a committee meeting in 2018 or 2019. Does that ring a bell, Mohammed?
Well, Councilmember Palermo, we don't vote at committee meetings, so
It might have been to count. It might have been to I can't remember if it was guidance at a committee meeting where it was just unanimous guidance or if it moved forward to council. I just remember the committee because I remember it was a detailed conversation.
thank you.
So the item was to add a median in between the travel lanes.
That's right.
I am actually not sure, and I know Rob Delros is also on the call. I don't recall, but if it was 2018, I may not be involved because I was in a different position back then. If Rob Delros, if he has the answer, maybe he'll jump in the call.
Sure, and we can take that up. We can take that.
Mr. Del Ross.
Hope everyone can hear me. Councilmember Palermo, I remember the conversation and I remember there was consensus. I don't remember whether it was unanimous or not. For the sake of tonight, I would recommend we focus on the aesthetics and we can go back into the minutes and determine whether that was passed or not. The aesthetics you see tonight and what we're recommending ultimately can be applied to the bridge, whether it's actually a 2-lane section or it's a 3-lane section as we described.
Thank you, Mr. Del Ross.
In other words,
Questions?
the cost numbers we're providing would not change whether there's a median present or not.
Thank you. Additional questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm sorry, I guess I lost an internet connection for a minute. Mr. Del Ross, we just bringing up that for all discussion tonight, we can ignore that. We can look at that later, and let's just focus on the questions at hand. Was that what you were saying?
So my recommendation was after this meeting, Mohammed and I will revisit that and find out whether it was passed or not. The cost numbers that we're showing you tonight would not change whether this is a 2-lane bridge or a 3-lane bridge.
Okay, great, excellent. Because I think for the safety reasons and other reasons as well, I think it's definitely beneficial to have that median, just really for that long term. But if it's all right, I'd like to get into what I believe the 4 questions are at hand and just share what my thoughts are. So number one is
I want to make sure.
Number 1 is Big Creek Parkway. And I absolutely strongly believe this should have the same aesthetics as the other 2. This should not have any.
Councilmember Palermo, we've lost you. So as we try to get you back, I want to clarify with Mr. Del Ross. I have intimate recollections of the Big Creek Bridge, and we have never approved a 3-lane bridge. It has always been a 2-lane bridge. So when you refer to a 3-lane bridge, I just want to make sure we're clear on this because the citizens of Roswell were adamant that it be a 2-lane bridge.
I apologize, Mayor. The better way to describe it would be a 2-lane bridge with a center median.
Thank you. Do we have Councilmember Palermo back yet?
We do. I was just about to call on my cell phone, but it came back up.
Perfect.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I feel there's 4 questions. Number 1, my position is this should be the same way as the other 2, which involves cost savings. Thank you, Mohammed and Rob and all of transportation for putting that together. So that's my position on number 1. Number 2 is regarding the arches. Ultimately, I think that's significant cost savings. I think that's cost savings that absolutely could be going towards more sidewalks, repaving, since we're potentially slashing that repaving budget. So I feel we should go with the no arches, which is in transportation's example. As for the vertical versus square, there's no cost difference. So I think we should purely go off of what the vote was. I think you said it was square. And then lastly, brick versus sandstone. Although my personal preference to me would be to save that $15,000 per bridge, that one does not seem as as much as a priority for me as my other items.
And Mr. Ralph, do I remember correctly that brick has a maintenance issue, sandstone does not?
Yes, but we are only talking about the very small areas compared to rest of the bridge. But yes, you are right, Mayor. The
Okay,
brick,
so,
yes.
so you all in transportation don't have any issues with maintaining the brick under our current budget situation?
So, Mayor, all the brick that you see on the bridge facing on the walls that's visible from 400 and the barrier walls that are on the bridge, they're not real bricks. They're just the brick look. So they use the brick form line and then they paint, make them look like brick.
Yes, but that's my question, the painting involved.
Uh,
Sandstone, you don't have to paint, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there is a maintenance issue as far as painting brick.
Yes, that's probably a long-term thing, but yes, there may be additional cost because of the bricks.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions from council? Yes. Councilmember Wilsey.
Thank you, Mayor. A quick thank you, Mohammed, and Rob, for the work that you've done since the work session. I really appreciate it, and this was all very clear and looks great. Question about the arches. Depending on the design, is that something that could be added later? Or is that something that, once that design is done and it's built, that's...
Yeah, I would say that yes, these bridge fences, as long as the base is there and the columns are there, yes, the additions could be possible. It just becomes a matter of funding at that time. And if you do it a few years after the bridge is built with just the flat top fence, then it's not going to cost 21,000 per arch. It's probably going to be a lot more than that.
More than that, sure. Okay. Another question. From the survey, the design with the arches is what was preferred, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I still actually have those slides later. I can actually quickly look it up, but yes, the public supported the arches.
Right. Okay. And the savings from the Big Creek Bridge on the aesthetics, does that go back into other elements of the Big Creek Bridge, or is that something that goes towards the complete project?
That's the T-SPLOST funding. It could go automatically. It goes back into the Big Creek Parkway project, but with your action, the City Council's action, it could go towards any other T-SPLOST project. And Holcomb Bridge interchange, that's also T-SPLOST eligible.
Right. I guess my preference would be to move forward with the complete proposed design of the 2.1 million that we worked on previously. I think this is a long-term decision, and it's something that Roswell needs a distinctive look, and this is an opportunity for us to create that. So that would be my preference. If you feel like there is a great value or reason to cut back, I think we could, but I think my preference would be to move forward with the complete package.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilsey. Do we have additional comments from council?
Yes.
Yes, Councilmember Judy.
Mohammed, when again, what budget would this come out of if we had to do this? Or, I mean, since the big bridges will be built at different times, when will we owe this money?
So the Big Creek Parkway, that's like I said, it's all in the budget already. So the Big Creek Parkway in a couple, 3-4 years, when we start the construction, actually we'll start the design build process actually next year. So in the next 2 to 3 years, but then for the other two, We owe the funds to GDOT, and their latest direction is they wanted at the beginning, which is next year, as a lump sum amount, but we'll have another opportunity to negotiate that when we sign the IGA with them during the summer. And we would ask them to let us do the installments like they agreed to do for the payment for the actual interchange reconstruction, which
So,
will be a much bigger amount. So I feel that they should be okay with us paying in installment over the next 6 years.
so, so I think this would kind of help me with my decision here, is if we get to it this coming summer when we negotiate the IGA and they say, no, you got to pay it all up front, then, obviously we're in what we just talked about before, a huge budget deficit, et cetera. And that's going to be tough right now when we've got so many other things to do. If we were able to, then when we negotiate the IGA and we say, well, you won't let us pay, no arches. Because my take on this is we only get one chance at doing the bare minimum to look for the future on these bridges, which are the gateway to our city, which is, business development, tourism, all the different type things. I wanted, even though it's a good call now because we don't have the money, the bricks underneath, I want to make this bridge look as nice as possible because we need to, this is the gateway to our city off Holcomb Bridge. And the other two bridges, Big Creek Parkway and the South Bridge. So for me, what the public voted on through the survey, which is the brick, or sorry, the sandstone, the arches, and I believe the square, correct?
Yes.
Is what I think we should do. But it all depends on when we owe the money. We obviously don't have a crystal ball, but looking at it with an IGA with money due all next year is going to be a tough call here.
Thank you, Councilmember Judy. Additional comments from council?
I have a comment. I'm in the dark, so it might not be able to.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. I am looking at the opportunity to save costs where we can, whether it's today or next year. And I think there was just something flawed in the survey that, and I don't mean to say flawed, but I think we should have had more information to the public where they're given a choice of saying, if you had an opportunity to spend more money, would you like this? Or is this an okay option for less money? And just being involved in transportation and seeing the struggle to be able to come up with funds just to pave roads. If we have an opportunity to save $250,000, whether it's this year or next year, that we're going to spend the money to be able to pave roads versus having arches, the square, without arches, it's just as beautiful in my eyes. And if I had that opportunity to redo that survey, I may have chosen that had I known that my choice would be either less sidewalks or less paving or the arches. So I'm leaning towards going without the arches, and I just wanted to share my reasons why.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So, well, first, I would like to thank the Transportation Department for bringing a proposal of saving $800,000 on the Big Creek Parkway Bridge. I think that is phenomenal, not only for the time that we're living today, but for the time that we're going to live tomorrow, after tomorrow, and the years to come. And with all the projects we have piled in the city, resurfacing, sidewalks, etc. I think that $800,000 saving is incredible. I really appreciate the department bringing forward such a saving. My next question will be about the survey. Did the survey include the cost? Was informed to the public the cost of all the different options?
No, Councilmembers, part of the survey did not include the costs.
Okay, great, thank you. So then, having $250,000 savings between arches and no arches, which both looks beautiful, but one save us $250,000 that we can reinvest in another project that people of Roswell needs and wants. I think is smart and reasonable and responsible. So I think that I will support the saving of the $252,000 on the arches. I will support the matching the Big Creek Parkway Bridge to the other two bridges in terms of aesthetics, so we can save us another $800,000 in there. And then, by the way, so I have a question. This saving of $800,000 on Big Creek Parkway, I imagine or will assume that doesn't affect anything operational or safety, correct?
That is correct. This is just aesthetic elements of the bridge.
Great, thank you for confirming my assumption. So I think that it's clear for me what I'm willing to support, and I think that any savings can be utilized very well in the future for more projects and more high impacts projects for the community. So, so to summarize, I will support matching Big Creek Parkway aesthetics to the other two bridges. I will support to go with the less expensive fence, which is going to give us a saving of $252,000. And so I think that, and we know we have a perfect example on exit 10, Old Milton, right next to an old traditional bridge. It's a wonderful development right next there. And obviously the bridge didn't stop the development. So, so far, based on that, seems like a myth that having a very expensive static bridge is going to bring development when we have an example, three exit north of us that that's not prove this assumption. So I think that making it nice and saving money is my position.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. Additional comments from council? Yes, Councilmember Tizer.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we just really quick, Mohammed, if you could just do the math for me again. What's the savings on conforming the Big Creek Parkway Bridge?
$800,000.
It is 800. And the savings going arches versus no arches is another 235.
252,000, assuming 4 arches per bridge.
So altogether, it's roughly $1 million.
So in the estimate I shared with you before, for these two, Holcomb Ridge and Express Lane, I didn't include include the arches.
I understand. The savings, oh, I see, okay.
So the number,
right, what we won't spend if we don't do the arches is another 235 or 250. So it's roughly $1 million that we save going no arches. Couple of things that I would say. I had an opportunity to see a bridge with the arches, which is north on 75, just north of Kennesaw. To be honest with you, I was kind of underwhelmed by them. It just didn't seem worth it based on where we are financially with T-Splosh. Just looking at the numbers, I'd kind of prefer not to spend that. I would say that I'd like council to remember that in the next survey, if what we want to do and use this time is there were no dollars involved when we asked the public, then next time we should include dollars. We can't go both ways, okay? I've said it many times before that if you ask people what they like without any costs involved, chances are they're going to pick the more expensive one. I can support tonight conforming the aesthetics. I can support tonight the square fence look, the sandstone, although I really don't care that much. And I would also agree that I don't see the need at this time, based on where we are, to spend the $250,000 on the arches. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tizer. I would also like to add my 2 cents, and I support the comments that you all are making. And I would like to remind everyone that as sales tax revenues have tanked, so have T-Splosh. So when we're talking about savings, it's not necessarily savings we can put toward another project. It is savings of money we don't have or may not have. So I'd like to factor that in. So are there additional comments from council? Councilmember Hull, do you have a motion?
Yes, Mayor, I have a motion. I make a motion that we approve, that we move forward with the approval of the bridge aesthetics with one change, so that we approve the similar aesthetics to the Big Creek Parkway Bridge, that we approve the fence look as square versus vertical, that we approve the brick versus the sandstone look. However, that we do not include the arches. And that would be my motion. Hopefully I have stated it correctly.
Okay, so you're supportive of the brick.
I'm supportive of the sandstone. I'm
Okay.
sorry. The sandstone as was agreed upon, or as we discussed in the last meeting.
Okay,
I'll
thank you.
second that.
Who was the second?
I'll second that.
Councilmember Palermo, second by Councilmember Palermo. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. At this time, I'm not sure how this works on a virtual meeting, but I would like to take a 10-minute break. And we will meet back here at 9:35. Thank you. Did you stop the phone? And the next item on the agenda is community development. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 5 of today's agenda, approval of a Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate, RC 20193887 to 1030 Marietta Highway, Big Creek wastewater treatment plant, Fulton County.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. We're going to share our screen here first. So let's get that set up and we'll get started. So this is the Metropolitan River Protection Act certificate for the Big Creek wastewater treatment facility located at 1030 Marietta Highway. Their background here is it was submitted to staff for review and approval, was then sent to ARC. The original submittal came in to us in August of last year. They did a revised plan and that was submitted in February of 2020. This is the overall aerial view of the treatment plant. This is the ARC MARPA plan that shows the categories that are located out there on the site. This is the site plan that includes basically the expansion of the treatment plant. It was reviewed by staff. Once it was reviewed by staff, it was sent down to ARC. The ARC reviewed it and their final finding was consistent with the Chattahoochee River Corridor Plan. Staff recommends approval of the MARPA application for the Big Creek treatment plant. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Does council have any questions for staff? Do we have any public comment? No public comment? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve item number 5 of today's agenda.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Zapata. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyser. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. Councilmember Zapata.
Item number 6, approval of a resolution to transmit the annual update of the short-term work program, STWP, and capital improvement element, CIE, covering the 5 years periods 2020-2025 to the Department of Community Affairs and the Atlanta Regional Commission.
Ms. Stivel.
So this is the annual update to the CIE and the STWP. And as you know, these documents are sent down to the state and to the Atlanta Regional Commission. These include, the CIE includes all projects that are impact fee eligible. So all the projects on the list are on the list for several years and they must be on the list in order to use impact fees that are collected. As you can see on this screen, the items in red are being removed because they're done. Items in green have been added and the other items have been on the list. That's the same with the short-term work program. So, and then basically what happens once you get down to the ARC, they send it around, they review it, the state approves it. Once it's approved by the state and ARC, it comes back to the city. We must adopt this by October of 2020 in order for us to stay as a qualified local government. And as a qualified local government, the status that allows us to collect impact fees and allows us to apply for grants and many other services. So these two items are basically a list of projects from the different departments. That's on the short-term work program. And the CIE includes projects from public safety, recreation and parks, and transportation, as those are where we collect the impact fees and what we're allowed to use them for. Planning Commission recommended approval to transmit to the state. Staff recommends approval to transmit the document to the state. Do you have any questions for staff?
Does staff have any questions? Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So 2 questions, Ms. Dybel. Number 1, I just want to clarify for the public that just because something is on this list doesn't mean that impact fees will necessarily go towards it. It's more of this is just leaving that possibility open for the future. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Excellent. And my second question, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ms. Dabo.
Yep. So basically, they might put 20% down to use for impact fees, but you may or may not use them. This list changes every year.
Thank you, Ms. Dabo. And then my other question is, so we know that you put the green loop was on there before, which was part of the previous Roswell loop. And then tonight we were potentially approving the bike ped master plan. Is that something that's on here that should be? Knowing that we wouldn't necessarily decide money goes towards it, but just to leave that option open for the future?
So the hardscrabble green loop was completed. So transportation has removed that one off of their list. So as you can see, that one's listed in red. The bike ped master plan, I don't believe that's not a project that would be eligible for impact fees. So that's not actually on the list.
Meaning it wouldn't be allowed to be on the list? Because I would have assumed it would have been the same thing as the green loop item.
So no, the bike ped master plan was a document, it's a plan. So if you want to take something out of that, you would look at the sidewalks. Maybe a project that might have been in the plan would be listed on the list, but the master plan itself could not be.
Okay, and that makes sense. And I guess what I'm wondering is if something within the master plan should be on the list, but that can be this is something that's done on a when's the next time that this is potentially updated?
We do it annually, so once it's done and adopted this year, we'll begin starting it on working on it again in February of 2021.
Okay. And that's something I don't think it necessarily needs to change for this year, but this is something that I think should be added if we do end up passing the bike ped master plan, which I certainly hope we do.
Okay, we'll let transportation know.
Thank you.
Additional questions from council? Are there any comments from the public? No comments from the public. I will entertain a motion. Councilmember Zapata.
Okay. Motion to approve item number 6 of today's agenda.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Zapata. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Tizer. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 7, approval of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, UDC, Article 11, Section 11.4, Streets, 11.4.1, Intent, letter F, to require the construction of multi-use path as recommended by the Roswell Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. This is the first reading.
Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Code by modifying section 11.4 streets, 11.4.1 intent. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to their authority, do hereby amend section 11.4 streets, 11.4.1 intent, letter F, to state the following and to create number 2, which the text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this would be the first reading.
Mr. Del Ross.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to share my screen here. Hope everyone can see this. Item tonight was initiated by you as a text amendment approximately 3 months ago. It has gone through Planning Commission and we're back here for first reading tonight. I'll hit the highlights and then I'll open it up for questions. As background, as some of you may remember, this item is focused on bringing in the hub and spoke map as approved from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan that you adopted in December of last year into the UDC, and I'll highlight those changes to the existing code in a second. The bike ped plan approved that map. It replaced the Roswell Loop map. And what we're doing here tonight is we're codifying that map into the UDC. Next page here is a screenshot for those of you watching at home. This bicycle and pedestrian master plan was the first ever done by the city. It is available online currently. It is on our website. You see on the left is a cover shot. Text on the right, I'll read briefly. The goals from the plan, as started in early 2019, was to evaluate the city's policies and practices, to consider potential refinements to the city's sidewalk matrix, to identify and prioritize the city's bicycle and pedestrian investments, and to develop fiscally realistic implementation strategy to balance short, mid, and long-term needs and goals with reasonable financial limitations. Next slide you see here is the current code. This is a screenshot from the UDC currently. I'll draw your attention to letter F is where we're focused on for this agenda item. 1141F as currently reads, it requires developments along 3 commercial roads, State Highway 9, Crossville Road, and Holcomb Bridge. And it states that sidewalk shall be 8 feet in width for parcels with frontage along those 3 roads. That change was passed in 2018. The changes we're proposing tonight are 2. You'll see the changes highlighted in red. The first change is to strike through the section that says sidewalks shall be 8 feet in width and replace that with a reference to another section of the UDC in a graphic I'll show you on the next slide. So instead of being shall 8 feet in width, it states shall meet the definition of a multi-use path in section 11.4.14D of the UDC. The second change is to add a number 2, and that's what's incorporating the map from the adopted plan along the routes identified as locations for multi-use paths, also referred to as spokes or planned spokes, is included in the Roswell Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan's map titled Roswell Hub and Spoke Bicycle and Pedestrian Network Map. The next slide, this is the graphic that we referenced in previously, and this is the definition of multi-use path we recommend moving forward with. You'll note section B, we have a desirable 12-foot, adequate 10, and minimum 8. Current code where multi-use paths are required, it's basically 8 across the board. Based on best practices and a desire from the transportation staff, we would like to make that adequate 10-foot as basically the going in position for projects. We are willing to narrow down to 8 for pinch points for resources that we want to try and avoid. And we are very willing to discuss a narrowing to 8, but we would like to set that standard at 10 initially and give us the flexibility to dial that in based on the specifics of the project and based on the specifics of the site. For example, trying to miss a expensive utility relocation or trying to miss a specimen tree that we're trying to avoid. This is the map. It's in your packets. You'll remember it. The first version of the map shows yellow dotted lines as the planned spokes and solid green lines where those spokes have already been completed or whether there's funding committed and we can view it from our department staff's position as a completed project for the sake of this exercise. I'll draw attention. You'll see the boardwalk down on Azalea Willio as a completed project. You'll see Azalea Willio up to 120 with the multi-use trail. You'll see Eves Road, the bond project we built several years ago. You'll see Big Creek Parkway. These are all example of completed segments for our hub and spoke. You'll see these segments in yellow. Notice that the fine detail in these segments in the yellow dotted lines are specific enough that it shows the side of the road where the trail is located. For example, on Old Alabama, the trail is located on the north side of Old Alabama, the same side as the park. You'll notice on Woodstock, we have it on the east side, adjacent to Roswell Area Park. You'll notice on Crabapple, we have it on the west side, also adjacent to Roswell Area Park. As staff and as our consultant, Pond, putting together this map, without going into the level of doing a topographical survey, we spent a lot of time trying to look at many different factors to make the recommendation on which side of the road the trail should go on. Some of them were very easy to decide. Some of them were difficult. Ultimately, this is the map that you approved in December, which is why we're showing it to you again tonight. The next slide may be a little bit easier for you to view. All we've done on this slide is turn the green lines yellow. So you see the same map just in one line type. It is the exact same map. It is all just in that dotted yellow line style. A quick summary of what Planning Commission told us last week. This item was approved 5-2. There was some concern over the interaction between all modes of transportation along multi-use paths, specifically PTVs, and I can describe that for a second. There was some confusion and some misunderstanding on how we are a PTV-friendly city and what that process looks like. Are PTVs allowed on all of our trails? Are PTVs allowed on the boardwalk in Azalea Willio? There was a lot of misunderstanding that I tried to educate them on and explain that while we are a PTV-friendly city and you as mayor and council have the ability to designate trails as an additional step to allow PTVs to use them, there is no default legal authority for PTVs or any motorized vehicles to use these paths. The second concern from several individuals was a simple discussion on is that 2 feet of added width and the concern over that added benefit of 10-foot paths versus 8-foot paths was with respect to the impact on the specific property that the trail was going to be on. A quick schedule for you. We're at first reading here tonight on May 11th. If approved, we'll be going to second reading on June 8th. And that concludes my presentation. I'm open to questions you may have.
Does council have questions? Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Del Ross. First of all, I just want to definitely show my appreciation to the Transportation Department. So you, Mr. Del Ross, Mr. Ralph, David Cox, and so many other individuals in transportation spent so much time getting a lot of resident input and really just coming up with a plan that I think looks like a fantastic plan. I think it's a great improvement from the Roswell loop. It's a lot more focused, targeted, and has a lot of strategic aspects. So this is something I absolutely do support. With that, I'm certainly hoping that this passes tonight. What I'm also hoping occurs, you got into the aspect, there were some areas where it was perhaps an easy decision, some that was a difficult decision on which side of the road, et cetera. We discussed earlier just different financial challenges that we have, even short-term and long-term. And also we had an example where this was kind of brought up and I learned a lot, was on the hard scrabble one in between the high school and the Target. The plan suggested it be on one side, but staff came to us and said actually there'd be some cost savings by moving to the other side, which was fantastic. I really appreciate staff being proactive the way that they were and always looking to save money. What I'm hoping is that this passes as is. I am hoping that in the future, in the near future, so that staff and council can always work together to make sure we have the best plan possible, that staff is able to come up with some approximate costs of each sides of the roads for everywhere in that plan. Because I think if we end up having one side where it would cost 1 million and one side it would end up costing 2 million, that's important, relevant information for council to have when making decisions. So again, I'm certainly hoping this plan passes as is, but I'm also certainly hoping that we can provide guidance and staff is supportive of just providing this analysis at a future time.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Additional comments from council, questions? Yes, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, I want to go back to the point that Mr. Del Ross made about the size of which size of the street. So my question is, how far are we with the analysis to determine which size of the street makes more sense in terms of complexity and cost? Are we 100% there? Or which percentage are we in terms of this analysis?
Mr. Del Ross.
So I'm going to go back to this graphic. Councilmember Zapata, to answer your question, I'd say we're 99% of the way there. It's impossible for us to be absolutely certain and perfect until we have topographical surveys for the corridor we're talking about. To echo something that Councilmember Palermo said, staff and our consultant Pond spent a lot of time, not just considering costs, but considering other factors, considering rooftops, considering logical origins and destination points to try and show you a map that you see on the screen right now with a recommendation on which side of the road the trail should be on. I would tell you right now, there are a couple of corridors on this map that I would like to see the line on both sides, because I think you could very easily make a case for the trail being on one side or the other side. There's very logical arguments that can be made. My answer would be, to answer your question and answer something that Councilmember Palermo said, we will be taking this map into consideration as we develop scopes, as we develop projects for budget moving forward. But yes, there's always going to be a couple of specific areas, Hardscrabble west of King being one of them, where we may be able to take a small amount of time to consider what might that look like on the other side of the road.
Okay.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you, Mayor Henry. Yeah, because Mr. Del Ross, when we had discussed it, I believe, I forget if it was you or Mr. Cox, but it was brought up that some detailed aspects like retaining walls, bridges, things like that were not taken into account. And as you mentioned, I think there's certain ones you probably have an idea where they're close, other ones where it's not. That's just something I'd like to make sure that staff, that council's getting to make educated decisions if there are possible updates, just to make this more feasible, because I do want to see this really be able to be implemented in our lifetime. Also, and then separately, so there's that side of it. Definitely just hoping staff can do that continued analysis at a high level, proximate level. Separately, I do want to comment on the other thing, which was changing the definition from the 8-foot to the multi-use trail as you've already defined. And that is something that I do support staff's recommendation. In Alpharetta, they have some commercial areas and some pedestrian type areas where actually the sidewalks end up being between 12 and 16 feet in some certain spots. So I certainly will trust and support staff's recommendation here.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilsey?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Rob, for the work that's done here. I think this looks great. But I do have a couple of questions. First of all, have you looked at and projected what areas are possibly can be done by developers or through redevelopment versus what would be the responsibility of the city in a shorter long-term fashion?
So that's something we actually produced a document, and it's been a couple of months. We may have even shared it with Mayor and Council. That's something that Dave Cox and I monitor in relation to the sidewalk matrix. So as you all are aware, we have a sidewalk matrix of gaps. It is over 100 projects. It is over $40 million. It is ranked by the priority that you adopted. One of the factors that we take into account when we make recommendations to you on which segments to go next is the likelihood that a commercial development could build that segment at a reasonable time frame. There is one segment in particular that Dave Cox and I have been monitoring for the past couple of years that is in our top 5 that we have intentionally not brought to you because we are very hopeful that we will never have to actually pay for it.
Okay,
so it's not something that's directly tied into this discussion, but yes, it's something that we monitor for the sidewalk matrix.
And it is a part of the priority. It's figured into your priority projects for the city.
It's a factor that we take into account when making recommendations to you, yes.
Yeah, I think it would behoove us to do everything we can to make sure that we are encouraging the redevelopment so that, among other benefits, that they are also building the master plan. One is just a very specific question that I had, and that is along 7 Branches, the park, where it's being shown as on that side of the road. When you showed the 20 feet measurement for right-of-way and the path, that concerned me a little bit because I know that's always been some concern on doing something that's environmentally sensitive in that area. So just something to keep in mind. I know you may not have an answer for that right now, but it was just something that just struck me when I was looking at the 2 maps.
I think it's safe to say that given if we move forward with design on that corridor, that shoulder would be up for discussion.
Okay, great, good, thank you.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. So I actually want to say, Mr. Del Ross, I actually feel the need to echo what Councilmember Wilsey said. I think she's bringing up some really good points and some really good examples, and I actually see them as related. That is an area where I do have concern with taking up too much of the shoulder. Really going into that park at all. I want to make sure it's staying as big as possible with all those trees. And we did encounter the challenge and the discussion on Magnolia near Coleman. And similarly to the first part of Councilmember Wilsey's point, which I fully agree with as well, I think it's related. If we think of that corridor right there, the opposite side actually has a lot of redevelopment potentially coming in for some very large parcels that would represent a large decrease in cost and the opportunity to connect it being an economic stimulator and still having the ability for this council to make some safer crossings as well. I think that's a perfect example of why I just want to make sure staff is looking at each side and what those potential costs are, and again, the cost, complexity, et cetera, for that example. But again, great points.
Thank you. Additional comments from council?
Mayor, if I can say one thing.
Yes.
Councilmember Palermo, Councilmember Wilsey, we hear you loud and clear. Our documents are living documents. Our master plan is updated both on a major scope and a minor level all the time. So yes, I fully anticipate that this map is going to be a living, breathing document that we make refinements to every year.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Del Ross. Councilmember Zapata, do we have a motion?
Yes, motion to, I assume there's not any comments on this item, right? I can go ahead and make a motion.
There are no public comments. I asked for a motion.
Okay, so motion to approve item number 7 of today's agenda.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Zapata. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hull. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. Back to you, Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. So item number 8, approval of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, UDC, to section 12.5, stormwater management, 12.7, flood damage prevention, 13.2, review authority, 13.14, enforcement authority, and 14.2, defined terms. This is the first reading.
Thank you. Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Code by modifying sections 12.5 stormwater management, 12.7 flood damage prevention, 13.2 review authority, 13.1 enforcement authority, and 14.2 defined terms. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to their authority, do hereby amend sections 12.5 stormwater management, 12.7 flood prevention, 13.2 review authority, 13.14 enforcement authority, and 13.2 defined terms of Unified Development Code, UDC, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. And is it up to you, Lenore, Ms. Romberg, or?
We're getting there. All right. I'm Danelle Murray. I'm the city engineer, and I'll be presenting some proposed text amendments to the stormwater ordinance, the floodplain ordinance, and then some changes that come out of those text amendments. The background is we brought this to you all in our committee in November, and then in December, the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District adopted a new stormwater model ordinance, and we, Roswell, are required to subsequently adopt the model ordinance as well as part of our MS4 permit. So then in January, we brought this back, we talked about it some more, and then last Tuesday, we went to Planning Commission, and here we are to present it to you all again. So this is from the ordinance, the stormwater ordinance section 12.5. And I want to draw your attention to the second bullet to establish minimum requirements and procedures to control the adverse effects of increased post-development stormwater runoff. And you all may recall that we presented some slides showing impervious area that was incrementally added year after year and results in negative consequences for folks on the downstream side of that when impervious area is not mitigated as it's installed. And so that goes to controlling the adverse effects of increased post-development stormwater runoff. And so as setting the stage, I'd like to go to the next slide for the applicability of the model ordinance. So the first three bullets are what's in the model ordinance. This is what it applies to, and we would like to add the runoff reduction requirement only for installations of new or replaced impervious area between 1,000 and 5,000 square feet. You may recall this, this graph, this comparison chart where we compared the applicability standards for residential impervious installations. And you can see our current standard at 5,000 square feet and then proposed 1,000 square feet of applicability for new or replaced impervious area. And that is consistent with our current 1,000 square feet for commercial installations. And it's also consistent with some of our neighbors and what they are using as their applicability standard. For completeness, we have detention also shown, but we are not proposing any changes in the detention applicability at this time. So there's a number of exemptions. These are existing exemptions in the ordinance and they will continue. And these are, there's a couple extra in here, but these exemptions also represent the way that we're already doing business. And we do want to add an exemption. We would like to propose that when folks replace an existing driveway in kind, that the stormwater ordinance would not apply to that specific land development. We have a couple additions. As you may recall, we took the model ordinance and added Roswell specific programs because it's a general ordinance. And so we made a lot of changes to add the information about our own ordinances and about how we divide up roles and responsibilities, most particularly between community development and environmental public works, because there's some overlap between our two departments on that. And then we had some changes in the definitions. So to summarize the recommended changes, we have the changes in 12.5, minor changes in 12.7 to talk about floodplain administration, and then the changes in 13.2 and 13.14, which outline the administration and enforcement, and then some defined terms that mostly fall out because of how the terms were defined in the model ordinance. So the recommendations, Planning Commission recommended approval for these text amendments and staff recommends approval for these text amendments. And I am happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Does council have any questions? Great presentation. I don't see any hands up and we don't have any comments from the public. So do we have a motion?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So motion to approve item number 8 of tonight's agenda.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Zapata. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Wilsey. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And it passes unanimously. Thank you all so much. And I will go back to Mr. Davidson's report.
Thank you, Mayor. The only item I have is a recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate.
Do we have a motion for closure? Yes, Councilmember Tyser.
Motion for closure.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Judy. All those in favor, please raise your hands. It passes unanimously. And I would like to let you all know that we will disconnect this call, and you should have in your inbox and your email an invitation to a separate Zoom meeting. So if you would just close out of this one and then sign into the next one, that would be great. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Who sent the other one?
It came from Nancy. I told you.
Have a good one.